We have two.
Yeah.
Hey, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, Tess.
hey, right. If a saw or truma fell into 100 and one ground them and they became less, then just as the coolant became less, so the truma became less and is permitted. If a saw of truma fell into less than 100 and one ground them and they increased, just as the coolant increased, so does the truma increase, and it is forbidden. If it is known that the chulin wheat is superior to that of the truma, it is permitted. If a saw of truma fell into less than 100 and chulin fell into there afterwards, if accidentally, it's permitted. If intentionally, it's forbidden. If one eats truma inadvertently, he must pay its value plus one fifth, whether he eats it or drinks it or anoints himself with it, whether it is clean truma or unclean truma. He must pay one fifth and a fifth of a fifth. He may not pay in truma, but in tithe chulin, which becomes truma, and that which is given in payment is truma. If the priest decides to forego it, he cannot do so. And if the daughter of an Israelite ate truma and afterwards married a priest, if the truma she ate had not yet been acquired by a priest, she pays its value and the fifth to herself. And if she ate truma which the priest had already acquired, she pays its value to the owners and the fifth to herself. For they said, if one eats truma inadvertently, he pays its value to the owners and the fifth to whomever he wishes.
Okay, so just because we didn't learn this together yesterday, I just want to put this down to say it again outside because this is fundamental to the parak that we're dealing with is restitution for misappropriated truma. Okay, and that is if a non-kohen eats the truma or consumes it in any way, as we saw in the first Mishnah, whether he eats it, drinks it, or anoints himself with it, he has consumed it, and now he has to make restitution. Okay, and then that restitution includes adding an extra fifth, which is actually a quarter of the principal, so that it's a fifth of the total amount. Um, okay, and that fifth becomes truma lechol davar, and that's what we said in the first Mishnah is that if he then subsequently accidentally eats the second from that fifth, then he has to treat that as truma that he has to replace and add an extra fifth of a fifth. That was what we saw in there. Who does he pay it to? If it had an owner, then it must go to whoever owned it. That then the principal goes to whoever owned it, and the added fifth goes to any kohen that he wants to. If it didn't have any owner, if he just separated it out and hadn't yet designated it to go to any particular kohen, then he can pay the entire amount to whoever he feels like.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the fundamentals. Mishnah Gimel. Hamachil is po'alav is orchav truma. So a guy has feeds his workers. Now this is a situation where he owes his workers food. This is part of the contract. He's got to feed them, or he's got guests. He invited guests, and once you've invited guests, they kind of expect to eat by you. Okay, so now and he accidentally fed them truma. So now who is going to have to pay? Says the Mishnah. Well, the first Tana to speak is going to be Rabbi Meir. He
Mhm.
says, "Who mishalem is a keren?" So the Balabais must pay the principal. V'heim mishalem is a chomesh, and the guests eat the guests must pay the added fifth. This is says Rabbi Meir. Chachamim disagree, say, "Heim mishalem keren v'chomesh." Both the guests pay everything because they're the ones who consumed it. Okay, even though it was accidental, and the fact is it was accidental, and even though it's like to the point of honest, they had no idea, they had no responsibility for the food. It was the fault is the Baal Habayis who gave them the truma, who should have known better. But nonetheless, since they are the people who ultimately benefited from the truma, they're the ones who have to pay it. V'hu mishalem lahem demei su'udasan, and the Baal Habayis must give them the value of the food that they were
Yeah.
supposed to eat. Now, this actually turns out to be financially advantageous to the guests. Why? Because if you're making restitution of the truma itself, and you have to take so what Rabbi Meir says is that the guests have to pay the chomesh. Um, Hold on. If they have to take chulin and oh, I'm sorry, no, it's the other way around. If you have to take chulin and turn it into truma, then effectively you are taking the loss on the value of chulin. okay,
Right.
which is more valuable than truma because truma is going to have a depressed price. You've got fewer buyers. All you've got is that only Kohanim can buy it. So, with less demand, you're going to have a lower price. Okay, so truma is always truma is worth less. So if you're saying that they have to pay in chulin that's going to be turned into truma, you're giving that's a disadvantage. Whereas oh, no, but it works the same. No, I read this yesterday and it made sense at the time. Um, because the Chachamim were saying that the guests have to pay the whole amount, and then the Chachamim and then the and the Baal Habais has to pay them for the Suda, which he was supposed to pay them in Chulin. So that's also in the value of Chulin. So wait, I must have misunderstood something over here. Um, just going to read out the commentary over here. Let me open up in English my app. Okay. So the difference between Rabbi Meir and the sages is that according to the former, the host pays only the lower truma price. So Rabbi Meir says the host pays the truma price, whereas according to Chachamim, he pays the price of ordinary food. So according to Yerushalmi, however, Rabbi Meir agrees that the price of duly tithed chulin is paid. The question is who pays. According to Rabbi Meir, the householder who is required to feed the laborers, whereas according to Chachamim, the laborers must pay since their meal is no more than an employer's liability, which he can settle with money. Um, but it still seems to me that either way, you're going to have to take chulin and turn it into truma. So um, it seems to come down to the same thing, um, because Rabbi Meir says that right, no, Rabbi Meir is saying that the Baal Habais must pay for the meal and the everyone agrees that the chomesh is coming from the laborers. They have to pay the extra because they benefited from it, even though it's not entirely their fault. So it seems like we have an agreement between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim that the chomesh is paid by the laborers. It's only the principle that we're talking about, and in either case, um, they're going to end up the Baal Habais is going to end up taking responsibility because while the because even according to the Chachamim who say that the workers have to pay the chulin and turn it into truma to give to the coin, the Baal Habais still owes them the money for that chulin. So the transaction kind of washes through in that direction. Okay, we're gonna leave it at that because it seems like the same sort of it comes to the same liability in the end. Uh,
Right.
it's just who has the responsibility to restore the truma. Okay, Daled hagonev truma v'lo achala. Okay, so you have a thief who comes and steals from the kohen. He takes truma, but he didn't eat it and he got caught. Right? What's the deal with a thief who gets caught in possession of stolen goods? He has to pay kafel, double,
Right.
right? To make it doesn't just pay back what he stole. There's a disincentive that the Torah gave that he now has to pay. Then he now has to pay double. Okay, Mishalem tashlomei kafel demei truma. He must pay. And if the truma was lost, then he has to pay monetary. If he was found in possession of the truma, then he has to give back the truma, plus he has to pay back the value of truma. If he stole it and sold it on or something, or right, then he now has to pay back the money for two times the value of truma.
Says
What happened?
if he ate it, he pays twice its value and a fifth.
Right. So if he actually ate it, now he has to pay both the carrion, right? He has to pay for the value of what he stole, plus the kafel, and he has to restore this again and he has to restore it using chulin. He can't pay money for this now because he's got to bring back truma into the world. So he's got to take chulin, turn it into truma, and give that back to the kohen. Plus, he's got to pay back the kafel, which is a monetary amount, and he's also going to have to pay back a chomesh because of the truma that he ate. Okay. Keren v'chomesh min chulin. So he must pay. So the Mishnah actually spells it out over here. He has to pay keren v'chomesh from chulin. So that's the normal restitution for truma. V'keren demei truma, and another another monetary amount that's the equivalent of the truma that he stole for kefil. Ganav trumas hekdesh v'achala. What happens if the truma was hekdesh? So let's say a Kohen had some truma and he decided he was going to dedicate this truma to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so that you can have. So now it's got a double kedusha on it. It's got hekdesh and it's got truma. So now the ganav comes and steals this. So your first principle, well, we'll see it in the Mishnah, is that there's no kafel when you steal from the temple. It's only when you steal from a private individual is there kafel. So the ganav stole it and ate it. Mishalem shnei chumshim v'keren. So now he has to pay the keren v'chomesh for the fact that it was truma, and he also, because he misappropriated temple funds, he has to pay another chomesh because of misappropriation because of meila. Okay, but there's no kafel because that's not applicable to hekdesh. So she'ein hekdesh tashlume kafel. Okay,
Okay.
Mishnah. Ein mishalmin min haleket min hashich. Let's just preface this that this is going to be divrei Rabbi Meir. So this is Rabbi Meir's opinion that we're stating first. So here is somebody who accidentally ate truma and he has to restore it from chulin. So now, because he has to restore it from chulin, Rabbi Meir is coming and saying, well, it's got to be chulin legamre with no trace of any kind of kedusha to it. It's got to have been chulin that now gets converted into full truma. And what does that include? En mishalmin min haleket. You can't have from the matanas le'aniyim. That's the leket
Right.
shich and paya. Because when the aniyim pick that, there is no din of trumas and masras. They can take that home and eat it straight. There's no no masras and trumas. Okay. Umina hefker. Same thing goes for hefker. If anyone finds hefker produce, you don't have to take trumas and masras. So Rabbi Meir says, since it's not in the parsha of trumas and masras, you cannot convert it into truma. Lo mi maaser rishon shenitla trumaso. Similarly, the maaser rishon that had truma taken from it, it's now been converted into chulin, but because that maaser rishon itself was not subject to truma gedola, he says you can't use that to turn that into truma as restitution. V'lo mi maaser sheni v'hekdesh niftu, and even maaser sheni and hekdesh that were redeemed and have now become chulin, you still cannot turn those. She'ein kodesh pode es hakodesh, because something that had a taste of kodesh in it that is ineligible to be used as restitution for something that was kodesh. This is Rabbi Meir. Chachamim matzirim ba'elu. Chachamim say exactly the reverse of Rabbi Meir. Say once something has been converted into chulin, it is chulin legamre, and it can be used to substitute for truma that was misappropriated.
Okay.
Okay, back to Daled Aleph.
If one separates part of truma and maasros, he may take from it truma for it, but not from another place. Rav Meir says he may take truma and maasros also for another place. If one had produced produce in the storehouse and one gave saw to a Levite, and one saw to a poor man, he may separate another 8 saws and eat them. So says Rav Meir, but the Chachamim say may only separate in accordance with the exact quantity. The measure of truma, a generous person, 1/40th. Beit Shammai says 1/30th, the average person 1/50th, and the grudging person 1/60th. If one separated truma and found that it was 1/60th, it is truma, and he need not separate. For if he added, it is liable to lyceris. If he found that it was 1/61st, if it's truma, but he must separate again according to his custom, by measure, weight, or number. And Rabbi Yehuda says even from that which is not close by.
Okay. Shvis Gimel Zayin.
Hey Zion. Stones which the plow turned up or which were covered and are not allowed bared, if they are two, each a load of 2 men, they may be removed. If one clears stones from his field, he may take the top ones, but must leave those which touch the ground. Likewise, a heap of pebbles or a pile of stones. He may take the top ones, but must leave those which touch the ground. If there's a rocky ground or straw underneath them, they may be removed. One may not build up steps by the ravine in the 6th year after the rains have ceased, because this would be preparing them for the 7th year. But he may build them in the 7th year after the rains have ceased, because this would be preparing them for the 8th year. He may not block them with earth, and he may make an embankment, and any stone that he can take when stretching out his hand may be removed. Shoulder stones may be taken from anywhere, and a contractor may bring them from anywhere, which are soldier stones, any that cannot be taken off with one hand. So says Rav Meir. Rabbi Yossi says, as the name implies, those are carried two or three on the shoulder. Okay.
Purpose.
He bathed on the first night following the death of his wife. His disciples asked him, "Did you not teach us, O Rabbi, that a mourner is forbidden to bathe?" He said to them, "I am not like other rest of men. I'm a delicate person." And when Tavi, his slave, died, he accepted condolences for him. His disciples said to him, "Have you not taught us, O Rabbi, that one does not accept condolences for slaves?" He said to them, "My slave Tavi was not like the rest of the slaves. He was a worthy, kosher person." A bridegroom may recite the Shema on the first night if he wishes to. Rabbi Gamil said, "Not everyone who wishes to assume that the name may assume it."
Oh, halos.
Okay, Dalit. There are items which act as barriers against tumah but do not convey tumah. A loom that is ready for weaving, of ropes of a bed, garbage baskets, and window bars. These items can neither convey tumah nor act as barriers against tumah. Seeds and plants that are connected to the ground, other than the plants listed above, hailstones, snow, frost, ice, salt, an animal that jumps from one spot to another, a person who jumps from one spot to another, a bird that flies, a garment that flutters, and a ship that sails on water. But if the ship was tied with something that can hold it in place, or a stone was placed on a garment, it conveys tumah. If Yossi says a house on a ship does not convey tumah. If two sealed barrels, each containing a piece of corpse the size of an olive, are located inside a house, the barrels remain tahor, but the house remains tameh. And if one of the barrels was open, the barrel and the room are tameh, but the other barrel remains tahor. A similar ruling applies to two chambers that open into a room. A beehive is located in the doorway of a
No,
house.
that's it. We're done there.
Finished? Just fast?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're done.
All
It's
right.
adios.
Um, hey, base. Rabbi Yossi says 6 matters are among the lenient decisions of Beit Shammai and the stringent decisions of Beis Hillel. Fowl may go up on the table and with cheese, but may not be eaten with cheese, according to the words of Beit Shammai. Beis Hillel says that it may not go up and it may not be eaten. We may separate olives as truma for olive oil and grapes as truma for wine, in accordance with the words of Beit Shammai, but Beis Hillel says we may not separate them as truma. If one plants within 4 miles of a vineyard, Beis Hillel obligates it. We may perform immersion in a torrent of rainwater running down a steep mountain slope, according to the words of Beit Shammai. The Beis Hillel says we may not perform immersion therein. A convert who converted on the eve of Pesach, Beit Shammai says he immerses and eats his Pesach offering that night, but Beis Hillel says one who separates from the foreskin is like one who separates from the grave. Rabbi Yisrael says these matters among the lenient decisions of Beit Shammai and the stringent decisions of Beis Hillel. Koheles does not render one's hands tamei in accordance with the words of Beit Shammai, but Beis Hillel says Koheles does render one's hands tamei. The purification waters that accomplish their purpose, Beit Shammai declares them tahor, but Beis Hillel declares them tamei. And a Ketzak, Beis Shammai declares them tahor, but Beis Hillel declares them tamei, and similarly with respect to tithing. Rabbi Eliezer says 2 matters are among lenient decisions of Beit Shammai and the stringent decisions of Beit Hillel. The blood of a woman who has given birth and did not yet immerse in a mikveh. The Beit Shammai says it is like her saliva and her urine. Beit Hillel says it generates tumah, both moist and dry. And Beit Shammai concedes concerning a woman who had given birth in a state of siba that her blood generates tumah, both moist and dry. Okay. And a person may bring his fruit because of thieves and remove his flax from the soaking ground so that it does not become ruined, provided he does not plan for work for Kol HaMoed. In all these cases, if they plan their work for Kol HaMoed, it shall be forfeited. We may not purchase homes, nor slaves, nor domestic animals except for use during this festival or for provide for the needs of the seller who otherwise have nothing to eat. We now may move objects from one house to another, but we may move objects from one house to another within its courtyard. We may not bring vessels from an artisan's house, but if one fears for them, he may move them into a different courtyard. We may cover drying figs with straw, and Reb Huda says we may even stack them. Vendors of fruit, clothing, and utensils may sell their wares in private, but for use during the festival. Trappers, cereal makers, and bean pounders may ply their ware in private, trade in private for festival needs. Yoshi says they impose this finishing upon themselves.
Okay.
Okay.
And we done.
Now,
Have a
to
wonderful
think
day.
about, we have to think about what we're going to do on